Okay, welcome to episode number 2 of DIY crafts in the underground workshop. We did frames last time. That was a lot of fun. That was a long video. If you feel like you want to do a craft, then I don't know, figure it out. Get started. That's how it gets done. Block printing. So we saw in the last video the art that we used were these homemade block prints I was doing, and so you know, this wood's pretty easy to get a hold of, and a couple minor tools are pretty easy to get a hold of, and next thing you know, you're making something with your hands and making art. I've done a couple of these now, and I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on how to explain just starting with an idea and ending up with a block print. So we're gonna do some of the work on the computer upstairs, so we'll cut to that here in just a minute, and then we're going to talk about some of the challenges and things to remember, so that if you do decide to take this up, you can shortcut all of the mistakes I've made so far. Though that's half the fun, that's half the way to learn. Largely that, and we'll talk a little bit about this more when you go to print this out, make sure you're carving the negatives so that it prints on the positive. We'll get into all that. So anyway, thanks for joining us. Here we go. Okay, so here's the image that we're using. Pretty simplistic. Visually, it's just all contrast. So where there's white on the screen is where I'm going to carve away, and where there's black on the screen, I'm going to try to leave behind for the ink to pick up when we're rolling it. This one's going to be, a little complicated because there's some really tiny little islands that are going to be left in our wood, surrounded by a bunch of blank space, but I've managed to get some pretty fine detail in the work I've done so far, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. Just making sure it looks correct is going to be part of the problem. So, and then the ethos of the piece itself is just we're halfway through July now. We got through June, and just kind of more that you study American history, the more you realize, a lot of our rights that we enjoy the progress on now have come from people standing up for what was right, and oftentimes that's come at the sacrifice of many people, brave people that are willing to do that. So specifically when it comes to Pride, LGBTQIA, the Pride Month, the entire month of Pride was is a marker of the Stonewall riots in New York. We read the history there a bit of Marsha P. Johnson and what she did to help with standing up against the police that were stripping rights from people, and literally a moment in history where somebody had to shout in the face of the police, "We deserve rights." And then the police started a riot, and the expectation is that you back down from that and cower, but a few brave people were willing to stand up and make sure we get those rights. So that's what Pride Month means to me. It's not just kitschy merchandise and corporate sales advertising opportunities. So that's where Pride came from, and that's part of what we need to be celebrating is the brave people that brought us those rights. But this, mostly what we're doing here today with this video, is just showing you the process, the underground workshop, how we make block prints. So right now the program I'm using for all this is just Photoshop. I've got an old version of Photoshop. I've got years of experience with Photoshop. I'm comfortable with it, but there are plenty of free online photo editors that allow you to do text and a few little bit of tweaks. I set the canvas size to the size of my block so that I know exactly how much space I've got to be working with and how it's going to look when it's laid out. Also, if I wanted to make tick marks in this and build a frame holder for my block, I could do multiple colors someday, just as long as I've got it the same every single time. The only other thing to remember from this is just when you're doing block printing, when we print it out, we're going to print it out in reverse so that we lay the image on, carve it on reverse, so that when we put our ink on it with our paper, that it'll print in the positive. I learned that the hard way. I kind of knew it but forgot it, carved an entire block and then went to print it and it was in reverse, so we'll shortcut that problem. Anyway, this is the image we're going to use. Gonna send it to myself and print it out. It's looking pretty good. Okay, now we're back down in the workshop. We have some transfer paper. So this again is it's like $6 at Blick. So again, not that we're trying to be cheap, but just pointing out that it's accessible to most people that want to do this for a hobby. So what I'm going to do is just cut off a little swell. Let's see. First thing we're going to do is, this is kind of centered. I don't know if you can see through it or not, but I can see through it. So I centered the image on there. Electric tape works a little better for this because you can take it off and put it back on without a lot of consternation. That looks pretty good. I'll just flip this over and cut this off the sheet. So this side is the ink side. Put the ink side down. Try to trap just a little bit of that. And the tape. Put another piece of tape here. So what I'd like to do would be to trace the whole thing in right now. So we're ready to get started here, and all I'm going to do is just use this transfer paper, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace around all the lettering here. Again, this part of it's just, you know, making sure we get our lines and images mostly kind of roughed in. It isn't until we actually go to carve it that we need to start making final decisions on how it's going to look. We'll just make sure we've got the shape of all these letters in there, and then the image as well. Okay, so a lot of folks that are doing woodblock carving have, you know, years of experience, and at that point they have all the proper equipment. They use chisels, and there's a whole section on how to sharpen your chisels. I'm into it. I don't know if I'm going to be into it that hardcore. So what I do have is a Dremel set up here. First things first, proper safety equipment. One of the many myths about anarchists is that they're not about rules. I like the rule of keeping my eyes protected. So I've got a lot of bits to pick from here, and as far as what I want to do here, we talked a lot about, you know, having to carve around all these letters. So I'm going to choose a really teeny bit to get started with, and I'm going to actually go through and I'm going to carve out all my lettering, and then maybe even start outlining some of this stuff here. It just takes longer to do it with a small bit, but you have more control, and I don't mind spending the extra time just making sure I'm not carving out more than I need. Once we get all of that kind of line work done, then I've got some big old bits here, and we're actually just going to remove most of the rest of this so that we have this black with a white background image. Yeah, now let's get started on that. So I've got all the bulk material removed from around the edges. It doesn't need to be, you know, completely missing. The lower we get it, the easier we'll have. So last step is just going to go through everything I just did in that bulk section, and then just hit it with this nice sanding disc, and that'll help me see any high spots that are going to give me problems. Once we've got it, then it's pretty much done. I'll run a test print of it and see how it looks. A little more sand. So we have our image here, and then I'm going to show how we ink it up and put it on some paper. When in doubt, ask somebody who knows what they're doing. So we reached out to our friend Alex, who's a wonderful artist, and she agreed to come over and give me a couple pointers. And I put those to use this morning, doing a couple other blocks that we have. That worked out really well, and so now we're ready to do this one that we've started with. She let me borrow a little bit of equipment I'm going to go out and buy. This is all stuff I could have had, but this is really nice to have this blocked in here. And then just some ideas on how to roll the ink on. So let's show you what we got here. We have here just printmaking paper, got a big sheet of it. This is 11 by 14, and all of our prints are 5 by 7, so it's easy to cut them into 3 stacks of 4, so we've got plenty to go. Just some minimal equipment here. Roller, something to make the ink flat, and then some ink. And then I'll show you a couple, probably what I learned, and then how it goes. So what I learned was this ink. It's pretty good ink, but it's nice to warm up the ink just a bit with a regular old spatula. You want to give it the idea that it's going to start squishing around. So we've got kind of a well of ink up here at the top, and then we'll work it down towards the bottom. Clean paper douse. So we've got our roller. Make sure everything's free of dust, best you can get it. Working with wood. And so I'm just moving the roller around, getting different parts of it, touching the ink, and then I'm flattening it out down here on this part. So it'll even up the paint that's on the roller. You hear that noise? That sticky noise? That's going to be important. You got that noise going. Keep lifting your roller up and rolling it back and forth side to side so that you get this ink covering the entirety of your roller. And then what we'll do is we'll do our best just to cover the top of it. And I can see in the light, you know, this we haven't done anything with this today, but I can see that it's dry here, and so when I put the ink on it, I can clearly tell where the ink is gone. So the only downside to this negative is that there's a lot of space on it where I can make a mistake and get ink where I don't want it on the block, which I don't want to translate into my final print. So I've developed a method for doing that as well. I've already carved this thing down twice. Trying to get rid of all this extra black that's around here, but I think that's just kind of inevitable. The best I can hope for is to do one of two things. So that looks like it's about ready. I'm going to take my paper towel here, get my finger in it, and then we'll just smear that a bit so it doesn't stick as much to our print paper, hopefully. So we got here our ink on our print. clean our fingers off best I can. All my prints are going to have a little custom fingerprint on the back of them. And then I'm just going through and rubbing the image. And I can feel it on my finger. I have a wood block, and I was gifted the use of an official tool for doing this, and I tried to use them, and I liked them, but I also liked just using my finger here. Let's peel it off and see what we got. I missed an arm, and that's okay. The first one is always just kind of a test. So, I expect the first one to fail. Let's get another one going here. Got the nice noise going. Plenty of ink. Don't want to be stingy with the ink. Lifting the roller up so that I'm always touching a new ink to the stamp. And if I keep seeing a permanent problem on my final prints, like I've got a raised area, then I've got my wood carver down here, and I might just quickly buzz off that little high point or something. I've had to do a couple quick alterations on some other projects that I've had. Let's use the block of wood right here. I sanded this side down so it's nice and shiny. Really good idea to not let the paper scooch around once you've actually got this going. The nice thing about the wood is that it's flat. So it's only pressing where I've got my image. But still, I think some of this stuff I'm going to want to see, make sure it's coming through, like in the face and in the hand area. Definitely want to be able to read all the lettering. Here's another good effort. This is the exciting part. Yeah, that's turned out pretty okay. I'm going to print the rest of these up. Maybe make a few tweaks, and then we'll see you back down here when this is complete. I'm done. I got all my prints made out of these. This was a long project. The ones I had done before seemed to go a lot quicker. But the final result I'm really happy with. So really thrilled about that. And you know, the thing about woodblock prints, I mean, there's a lot of things, but you know, each one of them is going to have their own personality. Parts that you like about them, it's hard to pick what you like, because you'll be like, well, I really want to look at this part and find the best one of those, and then this part over here is not perfect on it, or whatever. I think overall, just looking at these as a whole, I'm happy with quite a few of them. In fact, I can see the ones I don't like, and they stand out against the rest. So that's good news. Just got a couple prepped. Going to do a couple more wood blocks. We won't make a video about those, but I am super jacked on this process. I think it's a really accessible way to make art, whether you're doing political protest art or just things that make you happy. That's probably a good place to start. Find something that makes you happy, and then try to make art out of it. Thanks again for the advice and support from Alex. We'll link her down in the description. Thanks for watching. Hope this was inspirational to you. And as always, I really enjoyed making this video here. So we'll see you next time. Witty catchphrase.